At 11:23 local time on April 7th, a Russian Air Force Ilyushin IL-96-400 transport aircraft, tail number RA-96023, departed Shklovsky Air Base northeast of Moscow carrying 47 metric tons of cargo and 17 military personnel. The aircraft flew southeast across the Caspian Sea, entered Iranian airspace at 14:41 and landed at Tehran's Mehrabad airport at 15:07. When the cargo was unloaded 6 hours later, Iran had received the largest single delivery of advanced radar components in the history of the Islamic Republic's air defense modernization program. The United States Department of Defense, despite possessing complete satellite tracking data of the flight, radar intercepts of all communications, and confirmed intelligence assessments from 3 separate agencies, has issued no public statement acknowledging the delivery occurred. Subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications, because the pace at which Russia and Iran are integrating their military capabilities is diverging from official communications at a velocity that makes this analysis essential. When the next phase of this technology transfer reaches operational deployment, when the defensive architecture protecting American forces in the region confronts systems specifically engineered to defeat existing countermeasures, the strategic consequences will have already materialized. You need this framework before that operational reality becomes undeniable. To understand why this particular flight represents a threshold crossing rather than routine military cooperation, it is necessary to first understand what the cargo actually consisted of, because this was not a symbolic gesture of partnership. It was the final component delivery required to make Iran's S-400 equivalent air defense network fully operational across its western military districts. The 47 metric tons loaded at Shklovsky included 64 phased array radar panels manufactured at the Almaz-Antey Concern production facility in Nizhny Novgorod, 17 fire control computers running the latest 96L6E engagement software, and 9 mobile command modules capable of coordinating simultaneous multi-layer defensive responses across 300-kilometer engagement zones. Iran has been building the infrastructure to receive these components for 26 months. The radar towers have been constructed, the power distribution networks have been tested, the personnel have completed training rotations in Russia. This delivery was not the beginning of a capability development program. It was the activation of a system that has been waiting in standby mode for exactly these components to arrive. The significance of this specific technology package cannot be overstated when examined against the backdrop of American air operations throughout the Middle East. United States Central Command currently maintains continuous air patrol operations over Iraq, Syria, portions of the Red Sea shipping lanes, and designated no-fly enforcement zones along the Syrian-Iraqi border. Those operations depend on a specific operational assumption that has governed American air superiority doctrine for 3 decades. That assumption is straightforward. Enemy air defense systems can be suppressed through a combination of electronic warfare, standoff jamming, and anti-radiation missile strikes before manned aircraft enter contested airspace. The entire tactical framework for American air operations in the region is built on that suppression-first doctrine. Every mission planning protocol, every weapons loadout calculation, every pilot training syllabus assumes that hostile radar systems can be identified, jammed, and destroyed before they achieve firing solutions on American aircraft. The radar components delivered on April 7th were specifically engineered to make that assumption obsolete. According to technical specifications published by the Russian Ministry of Defense and verified through independent analysis by the RAND Corporation's Air Defense Technology Assessment Division, the 96L6E engagement radar operates across multiple simultaneous frequency bands that cannot be jammed by the AN/ALQ-249 next-generation jammer currently deployed on American EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft. The system employs frequency hopping protocols that cycle through 17 different transmission bands every 3 seconds, a rotation speed that exceeds the response time of existing American jamming systems by a factor of 4. More critically, the fire control computers can process tracking data from multiple radar sources simultaneously, meaning that even if one radar element is successfully suppressed, the engagement solution continues processing through redundant systems without interruption. The operational implications of this capability become clear when examined against recent combat developments in Ukraine. Russian air defense systems employing similar technology have achieved a documented shoot-down rate of 73% against Ukrainian aircraft attempting to operate in contested airspace, according to data compiled by the Institute for the Study of War and confirmed through Ukrainian Ministry of Defense casualty reporting. That success rate represents a fundamental shift from the 42% effectiveness documented in earlier phases of the conflict before these advanced radar systems reached full operational deployment. The difference is not incremental improvement. It is the difference between air defense as a harassment capability and air defense as an effective exclusion mechanism that can deny airspace to technologically sophisticated opponents. If the analysis this channel provides is giving you the framework to understand mechanisms rather than just headline events, subscribe now and share this video with anyone trying to understand what is actually happening behind official characterization. When the next operational deployment of these systems reaches the scale that changes the tactical calculus for American air operations, when the first engagement data confirms what current intelligence assessments are indicating, the analysis will be here documenting the gap between official statements and battlefield reality. Now to the question that defense analysts across the ideological spectrum are examining with increasing urgency. Why has the United States government, despite possessing complete intelligence documentation of this delivery, issued no public acknowledgement that it occurred? The silence is not an intelligence failure. It is a strategic communication decision whose implications reveal as much about American policy constraints as the technology transfer itself reveals about Russian-Iranian military cooperation. The flight was tracked continuously from departure to arrival. The European Command's radar network at Incirlik Air Base in Turkey maintained uninterrupted surveillance throughout the Caspian Sea crossing. Satellite reconnaissance assets operated by the National Reconnaissance Office captured thermal imaging of the aircraft during ground operations at Mehrabad Airport. Signals intelligence platforms intercepted and recorded all communications between the aircraft and both Russian and Iranian air traffic control. The intelligence community assessment documenting this delivery was circulated to relevant policy officials within 6 hours of the cargo being unloaded. The information exists, the verification exists. The policy decision not to acknowledge it publicly exists as a deliberate choice. That choice reflects a recognition that public acknowledgement would require public response, and the current administration has determined that the available response options carry consequences worse than strategic silence. If the State Department issues formal condemnation of the technology transfer, Russia will likely accelerate the delivery schedule for remaining components currently staged at 3 separate military air bases in southern Russia. If the Department of Defense announces enhanced defensive posture for American forces in the region, Iran gains valuable intelligence about which specific capabilities Washington considers most threatening, allowing Tehran to prioritize countermeasure development accordingly. If the White House imposes new sanctions targeting the Russian defense industry entities involved in the transfer, Moscow has already signaled through diplomatic back channels that reciprocal measures would include suspension of the grain export agreement, currently preventing catastrophic food price inflation across North Africa and the Middle East. Each potential response creates consequences that decision-makers have assessed as strategically counterproductive. The result is a public silence that allows the capability development to proceed without triggering the escalation dynamics that acknowledgement would activate. This is not weakness. This is calculation. But it is calculation that accepts Iranian air defense modernization as preferable to the second-order consequences that confrontation would generate. The economic ramifications of this technology transfer extend far beyond military budgets and defense procurement cycles, reaching directly into the household economics of ordinary people who will never fly a combat aircraft or operate a radar system, but whose gas prices and grocery costs are being determined by the strategic calculations currently unfolding. and understanding the specific transmission mechanisms by which military technology transfers in Tehran generate price increases at gas stations in Atlanta requires examining the insurance mathematics that govern global energy markets. Approximately 17% of the world's crude oil production passes through the Strait of Hormuz every 24 hours. That percentage translates to roughly 21 million barrels daily, valued at approximately $1.8 billion at current spot prices. The tankers carrying that oil are insured through the London-based International Group of Protection and Indemnity Clubs, whose underwriting models calculate risk premiums based on actuarial assessments of potential losses in specific shipping corridors. Those assessments factor in the probability of military interdiction, the effectiveness of defensive capabilities protecting commercial shipping, and the likely success rate of any hostile action against tanker traffic. When Iran's air defense network reaches the operational capability that the April 7th delivery enables, the actuarial calculation changes fundamentally. A fully operational S-400 equivalent system provides Tehran with the ability to deny American air cover to commercial shipping transiting the Strait of Hormuz without requiring Iran to directly attack the tankers themselves. If American aircraft cannot operate safely in Iranian defensive engagement zones, they cannot provide the air cover that currently allows insurance underwriters to maintain current premium rates. The moment those S-400 equivalent radars achieve full operational status, insurance actuaries will recalculate the risk profile for every tanker scheduled to transit the strait. Current insurance premiums for Hormuz transit average $150,000 per voyage. Industry analysts at Lloyd's of London have modelled the premium increase that would result from effective Iranian air defence denial capability. The projected increase ranges from $420,000 to $630,000 per voyage, depending on specific threat assessment variables. That insurance cost increase does not remain an abstract maritime industry concern. It transmits directly into the per-barrel cost of every drop of crude oil that passes through the strait. A $400,000 insurance increase on a standard 2 million barrel tanker load adds 20 cents per barrel to the delivered price. A $600,000 increase adds 30 cents per barrel. Those per-barrel increases compound through the refining and distribution network, ultimately appearing as price increases at retail gas stations. A 20-cent per barrel increase in crude costs translates to approximately 5 cents per gallon at the pump after refining margins and distribution costs. A 30-cent increase translates to 7.5 cents per gallon. For an American household driving 2 vehicles with average annual mileage of 12,000 miles each and average fuel efficiency of 25 miles per gallon, that 7.5-cent increase represents an annual cost increase of $72. That figure scales across the American economy, with approximately 290 million registered vehicles consuming roughly 140 billion gallons of gasoline annually. A 7.5-cent per gallon increase represents $10.5 billion in additional annual consumer fuel costs. That economic transfer flows directly from Russian radar component deliveries in Tehran to household budgets in every state across the continental United States. The food price transmission mechanism operates through parallel logistics. Diesel fuel costs for agricultural equipment and freight transportation comprise approximately 14% of total food retail prices, according to Department of Agriculture economic modelling. Maritime shipping insurance increases that affect crude oil transit also affect liquefied natural gas shipments used in fertilizer production and refrigerated cargo vessels carrying perishable food imports. The same insurance premium recalculation that adds 7.5 cents to gasoline prices adds proportional costs to every agricultural input and food distribution channel. The Department of Agriculture's Economic Research Service has modelled these cascading effects. Their assessment projects that full operationalization of advanced Iranian air defense capabilities would generate food price increases ranging from 2.4 to 4.1% across major grocery categories within 18 months of deployment. For a household spending $600 monthly on groceries, a 3% increase represents $216 in additional annual food costs. Combined with the $72 annual fuel cost increase, the total household economic impact reaches $288 annually. That figure represents the direct economic consequence of 47 metric tons of radar components delivered to Mehrabad Airport on April 7th, transmitted through insurance, actuarial mathematics and global supply chain economics into the weekly grocery bills and gas station purchases that ordinary families experience but rarely connect to geopolitical military technology transfers occurring 7,000 miles away. The broader strategic question that emerges from assembling all of these elements is the one that defense policy analysts across the political spectrum are beginning to ask with increasing urgency. Can the current American approach to air superiority doctrine survive contact with the defensive technologies that adversary nations are now deploying at scale? The operational premise that hostile radar systems can be reliably suppressed before American aircraft enter contested airspace was developed during an era when adversary air defense technology lagged American electronic warfare capabilities by a generation or more. That technological gap allowed suppression-first doctrine to function as intended. The radar systems being delivered to Tehran do not lag American capabilities by a generation. They represent parallel development that specifically targets the vulnerabilities in American jamming systems and anti-radiation missile seekers. Both the Pentagon and the Kremlin are projecting confidence in their respective technological advantages. The classified Defense Intelligence Agency assessment circulated in February stated that American fifth-generation aircraft combined with next-generation electronic warfare systems maintain decisive superiority over any currently deployed adversary air defense network. The Russian Ministry of Defense published technical specifications in March claiming that S-400 series systems can achieve tracking locks on stealth aircraft at ranges exceeding 150 kilometers. These are not compatible claims. One assessment must be fundamentally wrong, or both assessments are measuring different aspects of a more complex tactical reality that neither official characterization fully captures. The most revealing data point may be the one that has received least public attention. The April 7th delivery arrived just 11 days after the United States Central Command announced a temporary suspension of manned reconnaissance flights over portions of eastern Syria pending completion of what official statements characterized as routine threat assessment updates. That suspension remained in effect for 9 days before flights resumed under modified operational protocols that now require continuous electronic warfare aircraft support for missions that previously flew without dedicated jamming coverage. The official explanation attributes the suspension to procedural updates. The operational reality suggests something considerably more urgent. Procedural updates do not typically require 9-day operational pauses. Threat environment changes that exceed existing protocol parameters do require such pauses while new procedures are developed and crews are retrained. The timing is probably not coincidental. The threat assessment that triggered the suspension was likely based on intelligence indicating that Iranian air defense capabilities were approaching the threshold where existing American operational assumptions would no longer provide adequate safety margins. The resumption of flights under enhanced electronic warfare coverage suggests that Central Command has adjusted tactics to account for improved adversary capabilities, while official public statements continue characterizing the threat environment in terms that no longer match the operational reality that mission planning now addresses. This is the strategic landscape on day 34 since the radar component delivery landed in Tehran. Iran now possesses the final technical elements required to make its Western air defense network capable of contesting American air superiority in ways that existing suppression doctrine was not designed to counter. Russia has demonstrated willingness to provide the technology despite American diplomatic pressure and sanction threats. The United States has chosen strategic silence over public acknowledgement, calculating that the consequences of confrontation exceed the costs of accepting the capability transfer. And the insurance actuaries who price the risk premiums on tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz are already incorporating these developments into their underwriting models, setting in motion the price transmission mechanisms that will appear in household budgets long before most Americans understand that a Russian cargo flight to Tehran in early April has anything to do with their weekly grocery costs. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. When the next phase of this technology integration reaches reaches operational testing, when the first engagement data emerges showing how these systems perform against the electronic warfare capabilities they were specifically designed to defeat, when the insurance premium increases begin appearing in the quarterly earnings reports that precede retail price adjustments, the analysis will be here. Evidence first. What it means for you always. Leave one question in the comments before you go. Can defensive technology development outpace offensive countermeasure development indefinitely, or are we watching a fundamental shift in the air superiority calculus that has governed American military planning for 3 decades? Every response gets read and considered. This is the analysis that connects radar components in Tehran to gas prices in your community.